Do you remember a couple years ago when there was about 19 or 20 people offering on every single house listed, and the winning offer had to basically give up the rights to name their own child? So here's a real world example of what happened to me during that time. And yes, we're talking about the COVID real estate market of 2020 to 2023. Back during the COVID market, I listed a house just under $500,000. We got multiple offers over the course of a few days. The winning offer was almost $600,000. Fast forward to closing, talking to the buyer's agent. The buyers were having second thoughts, but we completed closing. Everybody was happy. Browsing around through the MLS a few days later, I noticed that the same house went back on the market, and then the same house sold again in just about 30 days for well over $600,000. It was the wildest time I've ever experienced, and that's just a real world example of how crazy the COVID market was. The good news is, at least if you're a buyer, that ain't happening anymore. So let's talk about why North Georgia's inventory surge in 2025 is finally giving buyers room to breathe and how to negotiate smarter. Hey everybody, my name is Tim Gibson and my channel is all about North Georgia real estate. Please subscribe if you haven't already. If you're thinking about moving to North Georgia or if you're considering listing your home in the area, please reach out. My contact info is right on the screen. I'd be happy to help. So we're shooting this video in June of 2025, and inventory is up anywhere between 10 to 25% across North Georgia, depending on which county you're looking in. Interest rates are still pretty high for mortgages, especially when you're comparing them to the 2%, 3% rates that we were seeing during COVID. And whenever you see a massive increase in supply of any product, the price for those products tends to go down. Because we have more supply, buyers have more choice and they can be a little bit more picky. We're not really seeing many bidding wars at all in North Georgia. And we are returning to, dare I say, a little bit of normalcy in the real estate market. But if you're a seller, it might not feel like you're returning back to normal. It might just feel like the rug is getting pulled out from under you. So let's talk about some of the statistics in some of the counties that I serve in North Georgia to kind of show you what's going on in the inventory increase in the real estate market. So the most recent numbers from my MLS will show us some of these stats. And the numbers are current through May of 2025. And we're going to look at Dawson County, Georgia first, which is Dawsonville, Georgia, and it has seen an explosion of growth in the past couple of years. That means that, there's still bidding wars, right? There's still a lot of stuff going on. Not necessarily. When you compare May of 2024 to May of 25, we've seen a 30.5% increase in homes for sale. With the increased inventory, we're also seeing houses sit on the market quite a bit longer than they were a year ago. Houses are sitting on the market almost 92% longer than they were this time last year. Okay, so let's jump down to Forsyth County, which is where Cumming, Georgia is located. A lot more houses in general in Forsyth County. We've seen an inventory increase in Forsyth County of 78% in May of 2025 versus May of 24. And days on market in Forsyth County is up as well. It's up 75% versus May of 24. Houses were selling about 20 days in Forsyth County in May of 24. And we're seeing 35 days on market on average in Forsyth County until a house gets sold. And last but not least, we're going to look at Lumpkin County, which is where Dahlonega, Georgia is located. And out of these three counties, Lumpkin County actually has the smallest number of homes for sale at any given time, still pretty rural. Even so, we've seen an inventory increase in Lumpkin County of about 25.5%. And days on market is also up in Lumpkin County. We're seeing a 52.2% increase in days on market until a house is sold in Lumpkin County. Now, some people might say that we are going to experience a similar market crash like we experienced in 2008, 2009. But I don't think that's necessarily the case because we're not seeing a massive increase in foreclosures or anything like that. I think that there is a lot of buyer fatigue happening across the country. Inflation is still up. House prices have gone through the roof since COVID. Mortgage rates are still high when compared to those COVID rates in 2020 through 23. And all of those factors have kind of swung the pendulum a little bit more towards the buyers, and they finally have a little bit more leverage than they did a few years ago. Here's some other interesting stats that will kind of give you an idea of what's going on. So in 2021 through 23, sellers were actually getting about 102% of their asking price. It was very common back then for buyers to pay more than what a seller was asking and really to take on all sorts of risk. And today, sellers are actually selling their houses for somewhere between 97 to 98% of list price. So that's just another way to kind of show you, hey, buyers might have a little bit more leverage than they did a few years ago. So what does that mean for you if you're thinking about buying a home in North Georgia in 2025? Well, like I said, you might have a little bit more leverage. Maybe you can offer a little less than what the sellers are asking for. Or maybe you can ask for the sellers to cover a little bit of your closing costs, which you could then use to buy down your rate on your mortgage for the first couple of years, give you a little bit of breathing room. You could use those closing costs to cover the actual cost to close the property. You can actually have a due diligence period that's longer than, a day or two. You can maybe negotiate on repairs. Maybe you can even walk away from the house if it smells a little bit like cat pee, if you know what I'm saying. During that time, people would just about do anything to buy a house. It was wild. If you're a buyer, one thing I would say is don't ever waive your right to inspect a house. Always check on the days on market, because if a house has been sitting for a long time, maybe you got a little bit more leverage. Ask your agent, whether it's me or somebody else, what is the seller's motivation for selling their house? Then maybe you can come to some sort of mutual agreement to help them out and help you out, of course. Tips for sellers in this market in 2025. Price matters more than ever. If you price your house too high, it's gonna sit and you're gonna lose a lot of leverage. So whenever you choose an agent to list your home, whether it's me or somebody else, make sure they are showing you comps that are very similar to your house if possible. And check the days on market. How long did it take for those houses to sell? How did they price it? Did they hire a professional photographer? Did they do walkthrough videos? All of those things play a factor in, but if you price it too high just to kind of see what happens, I'll tell you what's gonna happen. A house is gonna sit, buyers aren't gonna see it as a value, especially in a market like today's market. Then you're gonna have to keep reducing the price to find out where the market is for your home, and you don't wanna get in that situation. Like I mentioned, great photos, walkthrough video, those are very important because just like in dating, or if you're doing a job interview or anything else, first impressions are everything. So if your photos aren't that great, or if your house isn't quite ready for photos, but you got to get it on the market, it really could cause it to sit. So want to make sure you make that great first impression. Your house will sell, but you got to be realistic on that price, because it's actually sort of an inverse relationship if you think of it that way. Listing too high can actually cause you to lose money because you didn't start out at the right price, so you keep having to drop. And if it sits on the market for a long time, then buyers have a little bit more leverage. But if you list right at where the market value is, or maybe even a tiny bit below, you can create a lot of interest quickly, and you should theoretically be able to get your house under contract pretty quick. Okay, let's get nerdy for just a second. Bear with me here. We're gonna look at some stats. Median days on market is up around 36% or so in North Georgia. Price per square foot of homes sold is actually dropping or flattening out a little bit. Homes are selling for roughly about 98% of the actual list price, which is down a little bit. The number of new listings has increased pretty dramatically over the past year. Pending home sales is flat or even down a little bit in some counties in North Georgia. We're also seeing a lot more terminations. So buyers are getting into that due diligence period. They're taking a look at the house, and then they decide, you know what, I don't really want this house. We didn't see that hardly at all during COVID. So that tells me that we're seeing a little bit more buyer caution or buyer hesitation. And we're seeing sellers that are, they're wanting that COVID bidding war. Everybody's gonna give me 102% of what I'm asking for this house. And honestly, between buyers and sellers, it feels a little bit like a standoff in an old Western movie, with the tumbleweed blowing across the screen, and everybody hiding behind the saloon doors and in the old post office and things like that. Like, a little standoff. Again, this is not a market crash in my opinion. This is a return to a little bit more of a balanced market. For buyers, you can actually have a little bit of time to breathe, you can shop around a little bit, and you actually have a little bit of room to negotiate. And sellers, you do still have equity, but the days of listing your house on Friday and having your house under contract by brunch on Saturday is long gone. And some of the best counties for negotiation in North Georgia currently are Hall County, Gilmer County, and Union County. That would be Gainesville, Ellijay, and Blairsville. These are a little bit more slower moving markets, and they have a lot more inventory, at least currently in June of 2025. Areas that are still very competitive: Forsyth County, which is Cumming, Georgia; Cherokee County, which is like Ball Ground and Canton, Georgia. And regardless of market conditions, these areas are usually very competitive. All right, so what do you do in a market like this if you're a buyer? Number one, before you go shopping, always get your pre-approval letter from a lender. Know what your top 3 non-negotiables are in a home. And you don't have to be in such a massive hurry, but don't snooze either, because if you wait too long, then your favorite house might be under contract. So for sellers in this market, number one, hire a great agent to list your property. Number two, price it competitively. And for the love of Zillow, please get professional photos. Don't be like the guy who has an agent, or if you're selling by owner and you're in the mirror and you're trying to peek around the corner and get in a photo and you can see yourself in the mirror. We don't want that. And if you're curious about what this market is like for your particular situation, please reach out. I would be happy to help, whether you're a buyer or a seller. All right, so what do you think about this video? If you're a buyer, do you have hope for the first time in maybe a couple of years? And if you're a seller, are you thinking, oh no, I'm gonna have to sell my house for pennies on the dollar? As always, if you're thinking about moving to North Georgia, or if you're considering listing your home in the area, please reach out. My contact info is on the screen. We'll see you on the next video.